So, this is a topic I see popping up here and there and all over the place, in my comment sections, and in a few other bits of online Monster Hunter discussion. I think it's a topic worth talking about. That being, should some of the more commonly recurring monsters take a break from the next Monster Hunter game? And I think it's a tad more nuanced than a simple yes or no answer. There's a good amount of monsters that are pretty major roster mainstays at this point, and there's a few players out there who would prefer that some of them sit out a game or two. I have seen probably two major arguments in favor of leaving some of the big named monsters out of 6. The first one being that some people are simply tired of fighting some of the same monsters in each title time after time. Honestly, I can't say I've ever really had that thought myself. Not that I can't understand it, I just don't think I agree. The thought of being burnt out on certain monsters, it never really occurred to me whilst playing the games before this topic came up, and upon now actually sitting down and thinking about it and considering it more fully, I still don't think I personally agree with this idea. And I think that's because in my own personal experience, I usually have a bit of downtime in between playing Monster Hunter games. You know, it's far from all that I play. I'll put it down for a couple of months at a time. So if one game has Tigrex in it and the next one also has Tigrex in it, then I don't really feel burnt out on Tigrex because I already haven't fought him too much in the last few months. The second point I agree with a little bit more. That being that distance essentially makes the heart grow fonder. For a monster to appear game after game can potentially serve to dull how special they are to someone. You get used to them being there. You aren't given much time to actually miss them. And for some of these monsters, like the Flagships and a couple of Elder Dragons who appear the most frequently, I have seen some players worry that being in the games too often could serve to reduce their special status. And you know, I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, the Flagships are special to a lot of people. And people want to keep them special in the games and in their own minds. And there is kind of an unparalleled excitement when a favorite of yours that you haven't seen in 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years finally comes back. You know, as much as I'm always excited to see a favorite of mine make it from one entry to the next, you know, that sensation of happiness when a monster you haven't fought in so long gets this fresh new coat of paint and brand new moves is a great feeling. You know, and maybe there's something to that argument, that allowing these monsters their brief rests can serve to make them more special later down the road. But I think that raises a legitimately interesting question. Is it worth it to purposefully make the roster of one game a little bit worse just to make a trailer for a different game down the road a little bit more hype and, you know, drum up a bit of extra excitement for a future release? I don't know. Now, of course, I don't know how the monster selection process for each game goes. Not gonna pretend I do. I don't know what goes into the ultimate decision-making behind who rests and who stays. But amongst the reasons for leaving a certain monster behind, I don't know if making that monster more anticipated in a different game that we're not even making yet is one that I'd bring up. Genuinely. It's tough. I see the hypothetical positives. I mean, I'm still holding out hope for Lagaikris in 6, and I'm be more excited to see him than Teostra in 6. You know, and Teo's my all-time favorite monster. But that distance is what's going to make Lagaikris appearing all that more special. There's a good amount of merit to this argument, in my opinion. The potential positives of letting a monster rest, I think, are absolutely real. And although repeated appearances have never dulled my love for any monster personally, their return after a prolonged absence can make their return very special. I don't 100% agree with this argument either, but I see the merits of it. So, what monsters exactly are we looking at for a potential exclusion? Who has perhaps appeared a few too many times in a row and might be due for a rest? Well, right off the bat, Rathian and Rathalos, we're not even going to seriously consider them. They're going to be in Monster Hunter 6, and they're going to be in the games that follow after that. I made a whole video talking about why Rathalos is kind of the ambassador of the series, and why he has done an excellent job as a mascot for the last 20 years. Those two are way too important for the recognizability of Monster Hunter, too important to get the message out, to herald in this new title. So what about some of the other flagships? I would say that the big recurring three that I hear cited the most often when it comes to this topic are Tigrex, Nargacuga, and Zinogre. Out of all of them, I think they're probably the ones who show up the most consistently. Also, we didn't have a couple of the big ones in Rise, so that kind of resets the excitement barometer. You also have Diablos, who is in just about every major Monster Hunter title there is, and has, effectively left his cousin Monoblos behind in the dust. Then you have Rajang, who appears a ton, and a couple of the more staple Elder Dragons, like Kushalador and Teostra, who show up a lot, and make up the backbone of early game Elder Dragons, typically. I think this is probably the group I hear about the most in terms of monsters that some players would like to see skip a game. These guys have all been eventually in every Monster Hunter title since 4. Yeah, Tigrex, Narga, Zinogre, and Rajang skipped World, but they got in there eventually in Iceborne. And bringing that up leads me into one of the first concerns I have regarding monsters like these being left out of 6. Iceborne had a pretty damn brilliant marketing strategy. Every time they rolled out a new trailer, they'd cap it off with a teaser for another returning flagship. And the following trailer would put that monster on full display. You remember, Nargacuga's eyes flash at the end of the first trailer, you see him in full force in the next trailer. That one ends with Tigrex's roar. Boom! Next trailer shows off Tigrex fully in the flesh. You cap that one off with this burning tail sweep and Glavenus's roar. You follow that trailer up, that's Glavenus's trailer. And that one with Brachydios slime on an Uragon, boom! Next trailer's featuring Brachydios. I loved how that expansion was marketed, and it was brilliant because the developers knew that these big name heavy hitters would drum up buzz from established fans and spark that interest in potential new ones. It was a great way to perpetuate this cycle of ongoing hype until release came. And here's the thing. If we don't get these flagships and these commonly recurring monsters in the base game of 6, I'm kinda concerned that there might be pressure for the team to do the exact same thing with the marketing for 6's expansion. First of all, we know that they will include monsters if fan demand is high enough. We have developer interviews that said that Zinogre and Fatalis were not in the original Iceborne plans. They were inclusions made due to what the community wanted. So, hypothetically, let's say Monster Hunter 6 comes out, doesn't have monsters like Narga, like Tigrex, Zinogre, Rajang, Teostra, Kushala, that kind of stuff. And it's a really damn good game. Really damn good. I believe it's reasonable to assume that players are going to start to ask for those monsters to be in this big, new, awesome experience, because they want to hunt the monsters that they love in this new game that they love. And since these are big names, it's also reasonable to assume that Capcom would put them in the forefront of the marketing. What I'm kind of getting at is that I have a fear that if they get left out again and they get demanded to be brought in again, you might wind up with whatever 6 Ultimates roster being incredibly similar to and marketed very similarly as Iceborne. These monsters sell copies because they themselves have a recognizable name and a well-established history with the player base. And that's kind of another reason I'm not sure if the roster mainstays will or should take a break during 6, specifically Monster Hunter 6. They do sell, and they may be poised to sell even better. Capcom has made a point of saying that they want to broaden Monster Hunter's reach and notoriety. If you want to do that, then the monsters themselves kind of have to be household names. Rathalos is kind of getting there, but he's the only one who's even close. I kind of look at it like it's Pokemon, right? Yeah, you have Pikachu, everybody knows him, most people love him. He's a mascot, an immediate image that one conjures in tandem of thinking about the series itself. But you also gotta get that other classic that's been around just as long, is just as well known as the mascot, even more loved by some people, Then you gotta get that super powerful, super hyped up original big bad boss character who gets a nice moment to wreck shop every couple of years. Then, you got that one who came along a little bit further down the line, but not too long ago, and really instantly cemented itself as this classic that has a ton of lasting power. You see what I'm getting at? Now, you can argue whether Monster Hunter's growth is a good or a bad thing, and it's got its positives and its negatives, trust me, I get that. But I do come back to this quote that Capcom wants to push Monster Hunter forward in the next few years. So, for Monster Hunter 6 specifically, I think Capcom would be foolish to retract some of their big name monsters from the roster. If this is the push, they need the names on there. Now, we still don't know exactly what Monster Hunter 6 is, but I've talked about some of the educated guesses we can make. It's likely the follow-up title from the team that mostly worked on World. It's a 20th anniversary title. We know Capcom is expecting to sell millions with something around that time period, and we know they want to increase the reach of the franchise's name. 6 sounds like it should be a very large, very impressive, very heavily marketed title that they want to push for strongly. And these monsters, who have very recognizable names in the franchise, are an advantage that Capcom has at their disposal to push that idea just that little bit further. Now, that's definitely more of a business incentive as opposed to a gameplay incentive to keep them in, but I think it's a warranted discussion point. And, though I make the Pokemon comparison, at this second, I'm not too concerned that success for Monster Hunter like this will translate to a lesser product. At the moment, Capcom has been showing that they're more than capable of doing some awesome things with their most famed franchises. Could change tomorrow, but for the moment, that isn't necessarily a concern of mine. One more thing that came to my mind is regarding Sunbreak's incarnation of Rathalos. Now, a lot of the old flagships have the issue of being a bit predictable now. Their fights aren't bad, we're just used to them. They've been around so long and so many times that we know what to expect. They don't hold a ton of surprises for us anymore. Rathalos in Sunbreak was a tremendous reinvention of the monster. I don't want to delve in too deep because I want to do a video on this topic eventually sometime soon, but his improved animations, his combo patterns, his new surface-to-air balance, and his exceptional new flame breath attacks wholly revitalized him. And I see a lot of people echo this opinion that I have, that he is so much better of a fight in Sunbreak than he is in any other game that came before, and by a non-negligible margin. Though I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee because the developers have a billion other things to think about for the new game. I'm kind of hoping to see more Rathalos-esque transformations for the movesets of the other legacy flagships. Give him some new crazy things to do, make him feel nice and fresh again. Yeah, all returning monsters typically get a couple new moves here and there, but I almost want to oversell how much cooler Rathalos is now as opposed to how he was just one game ago. It was a really big step. I'd love to see some cool new ideas brought to the table for monsters like Tigrex, like Nargal, or Rajang. In the end, and after giving it some thought, I don't necessarily think the flagships and some of the other big-name legacy monsters should sit out just yet. Monster Hunter 6 is looking to be a pretty big, important title. I think they still have great potential to grow. I don't think they've run their full race yet, and I don't want 6's expansion to potentially have to result to the same roster as Iceborne. But after thinking about it, I do get it. I do understand wanting to preserve some of the reverence these legacy monsters hold. I do understand the potential excitement that could be had seeing them after being apart for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, as opposed to 3 months. I do understand that some people are a bit burnt out on some of the repetition. I just don't hold that feeling myself. And I don't think the time is right yet. Let 6 have its time in the sun, and we'll see where we are after that. But for now, this has been CR-Volcanic or Connor. Let me know your thoughts on this topic down below, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Shout out to the patrons, and special shout out to Pico Plush, Nihilist Chimerax, and Silky Dino. Thanks, guys.